Chief Executive Carrie Lam calls on residents to self-test 3 times from next Friday. City reports about 4,400 new COVID cases, continuing the downward trend. Government starts giving out anti-epidemic packages to the entire population. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. Chief Executive Carrie Lam resumed daily COVID briefings today after being absent yesterday due to scheduling issues. She said residents should conduct self-tests for 3 straight days next week using the rapid test kits given out by the government as part of the anti-epidemic packages starting today. Christy Khan reports.
Speaking at her regular morning press briefing, Chief Executive Carrie Lam said Hong Kong residents should conduct rapid tests from Friday to Sunday next week, with the test kits included in the anti-pandemic packages that are being distributed to every household in the city starting today. She said the self-test exercise will help assess and provide a snapshot of the COVID infection level in Hong Kong. It will also help identify silent carriers of the virus in the community as well.
Since the RAT test is a much more convenient, self-administered type of instrument that we have accepted, worldwide they have accepted that the RAT positive is a good enough confirmation of the person being infected. So we want to do it on a more extensive basis. It is a voluntary exercise, so we could only appeal to people's cooperation, riding on their aspiration to resume normal daily living as soon as possible, and also to be able to travel.
Lam added people could test positive during a rapid test will have to report their results on the RAT self-declaration platform. Lam also said more publicity about the rapid test will be available soon on how to carry out the self-test properly. However, she emphasized that the voluntary rapid test will not replace the as yet unscheduled compulsory universal testing scheme.
Our position has not changed. We believe compulsory universal testing remains an effective means, especially if our goal is to achieve zero COVID. But as to when we should carry out the compulsory universal testing is a matter of timing, is also a matter of capacity.
She believes mass testing is necessary, and the authorities will continue to listen to experts' advice to decide on a suitable time frame. Christy Khan, TVB News.
The chief executive has declined to explain why she cancelled her daily pandemic briefing yesterday. Media reports said Lam met Director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Xia Baolong, in Shenzhen, over issues including the upcoming CE election. She refused to confirm or deny the report today. As the nomination period for the CE election will start on Sunday, Lam remains tight-lipped on whether she will seek a second term. The city reported 4,475 COVID cases today, with a declining number of local infections, but an increase in imported cases.
I think the increase in number of imported cases is expected because previously we have banned some countries from flying to Hong Kong. So all these imported cases will be isolated and treated.
With the flight ban lifted for 9 countries, 80 new imported infections were identified today. Among them, 4 passengers on the same flight tested positive for the virus. The Centre for Health Protection announced that flights from Dubai via Bangkok to Hong Kong, operated by Emirates, will be suspended for a week, according to the flight suspension mechanism. A further 99 COVID patients died at public hospitals over the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, the health authorities also clarified that the 2 imported cases back in February did not carry the same variant identified as the XE, a blend of Omicron BA1 and BA2. Government advisor Professor David Ho said the XE variant is even more contagious than Omicron, but it's not posing much threat to the public just yet. As mentioned earlier, Hong Kong residents will be receiving anti-pandemic service bags from the government. By this afternoon, officials and volunteers had given out about 130,000 bags to 39,000 families. The distribution is expected to take about a week. Volunteers from several political parties joined in today to help give the service bags out in different districts. Lawmakers were also among those offering help. Inside these bags are face masks, rapid antigen kits and Chinese medicine. But for some, the items came too late. He said, "I've already recovered from COVID, and it would have been better if they had distributed them at the height of the pandemic wave." For residents in Tuen Mun, they are receiving an extra item in the service bags, an oximeter from lawmaker Michael Tian. He said the father of an acquaintance tested positive and passed away while asleep because his blood oxygen level was too low, and hopes the device could save lives. Acting Secretary for Home Affairs Jack Chan was with some lawmakers in Outlay Chow and Kowloon City to join in the efforts. Chan said underprivileged families, those in subdivided flats and the elderly who live on their own will be among the first to receive the service bags. As for units with no one answering the door, volunteers will leave behind a card which would allow residents to pick it up later at a nearby service centre. There are 90 such stations around town that will be in service from April 7th to 13th. Volunteers from the Beijing Liaison Office in Hong Kong also gave out service bags in Sham Shui Po. Chief Executive Carrie Lam handed out the bags in Sai Ying Pun this afternoon. She said residents seem to welcome these bags because no registration or queuing is required. Meanwhile, Chief Secretary for Administration John Lee was distributing the bags in North Point and Yang Ma Tei. The mainland reported more than 2,000 new locally transmitted COVID cases, as well as some 7,800 local asymptomatic cases. Meanwhile, more than 14 million Shanghai residents were tested on Friday with nucleic acid tests in Puxi amid the city's second phase of closed-off management. The city reported 260 confirmed locally transmitted cases and about 6,000 asymptomatic carriers, attributing the daily rise in positive cases to a wider range of screening. A local official said the current epidemic situation is severe and complicated. Elsewhere, South Korea reported more than 264,000 new infections yesterday. That was down from over 280,000 the previous day. The country is allowing fully vaccinated tourists from all countries to enter without quarantine effective from yesterday. This comes as it is set to further relax social distancing rules next week and possibly scrap most pandemic-related curbs later this month. That would include mask wearing outdoors. The border opening up will mean no need for 7 days quarantine, but a negative test result is still required for entry. Incheon International Airport, the main gateway to Seoul and the rest of South Korea, expected its passenger traffic yesterday to surpass 20,000 for the first time in 2 years. Daily traffic has sunk to as low as 3,000 during the pandemic. President Xi Jinping has held a virtual summit with leaders of the European Council and European Commission. During the meeting, Xi said China supports the EU's efforts towards a political settlement. He also said the EU should form an independent China policy. Caleb Leung has more.
This is the first summit between Chinese and EU leaders in almost 2 years. During his virtual meeting with European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, President Xi Jinping said China and EU share extensive common interests. He said the EU should form its own perception of China and adopt an independent China policy. Xi also said the EU should work with China to promote the steady and sustained growth of China-EU relations. On the crisis in Ukraine, Xi Jinping said China supports the EU's efforts toward a political settlement and has been encouraging peace talks in its own way. The president noted the root cause of the crisis is the regional security tensions in Europe that have built up over the years. A fundamental solution is to accommodate the legitimate security concerns of all relevant parties. China supports Europe, Russia, the US, and NATO in holding dialogue to find solutions. After the meeting, European Council President Charles Michel called on China to help end the war in Ukraine.
Any attempts to circumvent sanctions or provide aid to Russia would prolong the war. This would lead to more loss of life and greater economic impact.
Michel also said Europeans and the global community would welcome positive steps by China to help end the war in Ukraine. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Telecoms giant Huawei has given Finance Chief Meng Wanzhou the new position of rotating chairwoman. Meng returned to China in 2021 after nearly 3 years of detention in Canada. She was detained by Canadian authorities in 2018 at the request of the U.S. over alleged attempts by Huawei-linked companies to sell equipment to Iran in breach of sanctions. She was allowed to return last September after an agreement with American prosecutors to end a bank fraud case. Meng is the daughter of Huawei founder Ren Zhengfei. Still to come on tonight's news, Ukrainian military is making some progress against Russian invasion. U.S. cancels missile test to avoid raising tensions with Moscow. And Pope Francis issues historic apology to indigenous Canadians. Welcome back to TVB News. Ukrainian forces have recaptured more territory around Kiev from Russian forces as they fled, leaving destruction in many villages. Meanwhile, Russian missiles have struck targets in central Ukraine around Poltava and Kremenchuk. Matthew Bray reports.
British military intelligence says that Russian forces have abandoned Hostomel airport in a northwestern suburb of Kyiv, where there has been fighting since day one. A local governor said that Russia is continuing to withdraw forces from the region and heading back towards unwilling ally Belarus. But in the upmarket hamlet of Dmitrivka, the toll of this appalling war is clear for all to see. Smouldering wrecks of tanks, charred corpses and a living hell, as described by one resident.
We were with them when they were visiting houses because they were trying to open some cupboards and looking for something, but we were... I have a very brave wife. She was watching them, making clear that they should not take anything.
Innocent animals were also caught up in the shelling. This doe badly burned. But the Russians were driven out or killed, something emphasized by the Ukrainian Deputy Interior Minister.
You see that enemy overestimated its potential around the Kiev at least, and we keep going forward, liberating our cities and evacuating our people.
Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces were mining everything as they retreated. Earlier, he met the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, and told her that Europe does not have the right to remain silent on what is happening in Mariupol. The port city has been subject to intense fighting for weeks. It has largely been destroyed with a lack of basics like water and electricity. This woman, Natalia, said that she and her husband were sheltering in an orphanage, itself already badly damaged. The Red Cross will try again today to get people out. Further down the Black Sea coast in Mykolaiv, a huge crater from a Russian bomb. Fortunately, no casualties, but damage to houses and other structures. Olga Ivanova, a farmer, said she didn't realize how serious it was until she came out in the morning. I was alone. It was hard for me, she said. Matthew Bray, TVB News.
The United States has cancelled a test of a Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. This is an attempt to lower the nuclear tension with Russia, the U.S. Air Force told Reuters. The Pentagon first delayed the test on March 2nd when Russia said it was putting its nuclear forces on high alert. Washington said it was incumbent on both sides to bear in mind the risks of miscalculation. The next Minuteman test is scheduled for later this year. Russian officials say President Vladimir Putin's demand that unfriendly countries pay for energy in rubles does not mean supplies will be immediately interrupted. Alan Bugnia reports.
Gas used for heating and electricity was still flowing from Russia to Europe Friday. Many European countries are highly dependent on Russian gas. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said payments on shipments in progress don't have to be made right away, but sometime around late April or early May. A day earlier, Putin said Russia would start accepting only ruble payments and gas supplies would be cut off for buyers that don't agree to the new conditions.
And now Russia discovers that it has actually extremely powerful tools to influence the Western economy. We were told that we can use energy as a weapon against the West.
A decree later signed by Putin says countries could pay foreign currency to Gazprom Bank, which would then convert the money into rubles to pay for the gas. The decree gave the banks 10 days to make arrangements. Putin's measures apply to countries deemed unfriendly for imposing sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The demand has jolted energy markets and raised fears it could lead to an interruption of gas supplies to Europe. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said he read the contract with Russia and Germany would continue paying in euros. The European Commission's energy chief said the EU is coordinating to establish a common approach. Alan Bugnia, TVB News.
Pope Francis has apologized to Canadian indigenous people for the Roman Catholic Church's role in residential schools that sought to erase their cultures and subjected many of them to abuse. In an address to native leaders following a week of meetings with delegates from indigenous nations, the Pope said he was pained by the behavior of some Catholic Church members. Around 150,000 children were taken from their homes between 1831 and 1996. The idea was to assimilate indigenous children into Christian denominations on behalf of the government. Most of the schools were run by the Catholic Church. Many were subject to abuse, rape, and malnutrition. That's the news. Thanks for joining us.